Good morning and welcome to our Sunday presentation. United Lodge of Theosophists, Washington, D.C. meets every Sunday at 11 a.m. for the discussion of a particular topic. Today's discussion will be on the power of a vow, and next week the topic will be Paracelsus, the philosopher. Please also note that we meet every first and third Sunday of the month at 12:30 p.m. to read and discuss selected theosophical writings, and we're currently having roundtable discussions on the Bhagavad Gita. Our lodge, United Lodge of Theosophists, is guided by its declaration, which states the following. The policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of theosophy, without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the Theosophical Movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy, and the exemplification and practice of those principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the sole bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity, without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization, and it welcomes this association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes, and who desire to fit themselves, by study and otherwise, to be the better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. Today's reading comes from the Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 12, Devotion by Means of Faith. Arjuna, among those of thy devotees who always thus worship thee, which take the better way? Those who worship the indivisible and unmanifested, or those who serve thee as thou now art? Krishna, those who worship me with constant zeal, with the highest faith and minds placed on me, are held in high esteem by me. But those who, with minds equal toward everything, with senses and organs restrained, and rejoicing in the good of all creatures, meditate on the inexhaustible, immovable, highest, incorruptible, difficult to contemplate, invisible, omnipresent, unthinkable, the witness, undemonstrable, shall also come unto me. For those whose hearts are fixed on the unmanifested, the labor is greater, because the path which is not manifest is with difficulty attained by corporeal beings. But for those who worship me, renouncing in me all their actions, regarding me as the supreme goal, and meditating on me alone, if their thoughts are turned to me, O son of Pritha, I presently become the savior from this ocean of incarnations and death. Place then thy heart on me, penetrate me with thy understanding, and thou shalt without doubt hereafter dwell in me. But if thou shouldst be unable to once steadfastly to fix thy heart and mind on me, strive then, O Dhananjaya, to find me by constant practice in devotion. If after constant practice thou art still unable, follow me by actions performed for me, for by doing works for me thou shalt attain perfection. But if thou art unequal even to this, then being self-restrained, place all thy works, failures and successes alike on me, abandoning in me the fruit of every action. For knowledge is better than constant practice. Meditation is superior to knowledge. Renunciation of the fruit of action to meditation. Final emancipation immediately results from such renunciation. My devotee who is free from enmity, well disposed towards all creatures, merciful, wholly exempt from pride and selfishness, the same in pain and pleasure, patient of wrongs, contented, constantly devout, self-governed, firm in resolves, and whose mind and heart are fixed on me alone, is dear unto me. He also is my beloved, of whom mankind is not afraid, and who has no fear of man, who is free from joy, from despondency, and the undread of harm. My devotee who is unexpecting, pure, just, impartial, devoid of fear, and who hath forsaken interest in the results of action, is dear unto me. He also is worthy of my love, who neither rejoiceth nor findeth fault, who neither lamenteth nor coveteth, and being my servant, hath forsaken interest in both good and evil results. He also is my beloved servant, who is equal-minded to friend or foe, the same in honor and dishonor, in cold and heat, in pain and pleasure, and is unsolicitous about the event of things, to whom praise and blame are as one, who is of little speech, content with whatever cometh to pass, who hath no fixed habitation, and whose heart, full of devotion, is firmly fixed. But those who seek the sacred ambrosia, the religion of immortality, even as I have explained it, full of faith, intent on me above all others, and united to devotion, are my most beloved. And now for today's reading.
Thank you, friends. Probably the best known vow is that coming out of the influence of Hippocrates. HPB recorded in the Theosophical Glossary that Hippocrates was a famous Greek physician who delivered his town from a dreadful pestilence. He was called the father of medicine. Having studied his art from the votive tablets offered by the cured patients at the temples of Asclepius, he became an initiate and the most proficient healer of his day. So much so that he was almost deified. His learning and his knowledge were enormous. Galen says of his writings that they are truly the voice of an oracle. He died in his 100th year at 361 BC, is so recorded in HPB. The practice of medicine in his days was limited to the temples, which healed the diseases of the body as well as of the mind. As civilization rose in glory and declined in virtue, initiates became more rare and priests more plentiful. Religion, philosophy, and medicine declined along with purity in government until all public service became corrupted by those who sought honors and profit for themselves while vociferously protesting their devotion to the general welfare. Thus, Hippocrates wrote as remarkably as he healed and taught. The parallels exist today in all directions and in the Theosophical Movement as well. So far as they can be traced, every genuine discovery or advance in medicine, as in other arts and sciences, has been due to the inner sense, not to any of the methods of the schools or any processes of reasoning or experiment from them. The moral and ethical basis and motive through which alone this inner vision may be exercised or developed so that each may become his own physician was pointed out, and this too was derived from Hippocrates as well as from H.B. Blavatsky. According to her, the famous Hippocratic Oath was in fact but an exoteric rendering of the vow of discipleship, a pledge still taken in the heart by all true candidates for the service of mankind in Master's cause. However the form changes, the spirit of this oath never varies. Some extracts from it have come down to us in the Hippocratic Collection. Quote, I will look upon him who shall have taught me this art, even as one of my parents. I will share my substance with him, and I will supply his necessities if he be in need. I will teach this art to those who would learn it, without fee or covenant. I will impart this art by precept and by example. I will give no poisonous portion to anyone, even though it be demanded of me. Whatsoever house I enter, there will I go for the benefit of the ailing, refraining from all wrongdoing or corruption. Whatsoever things I see or hear which ought not to be noised abroad, I will keep silent, thereon counting them sacred. Mr. Judge commented that wisdom as well as virtue both are needed in him who aspires to the highest development. Virtue leads only to heaven, wisdom leads to union with the whole. But wisdom must at last have virtue as a companion. Virtue pursued and practiced throughout many lives will lead at last to wisdom. Yet wisdom first attained makes the cultivation of virtue easier. The highest development cannot be obtained in any single incarnation. The teachers say we must seek the company of those who are pure and wise, who lead holy lives, and that we must look for knowledge with persistency, humbleness, and faith, and that thus setting our feet upon the path, the goal will loom in sight after many weary struggles. In the teachings, we also find that when the student is ready, the master will appear. But we are cautioned that we must first purify ourselves by our own self-induced and self-devised methods, one being to pledge and prove one's self-worthy by actually living up to our pledge. We all bring with us different experiences when we find Theosophy. In our past and current incarnations, we have those experiences. This platform welcomes all who find us as they progress from perhaps exoteric inquirers to becoming the most dedicated workers for humanity. We know that we can do better as a group if we help each other assimilate the teachings. Once it truly dawns on us the importance of this program as given and guided by Masters of Wisdom, we may choose to make vows associated with guarding secrets that could be applied as intended for the benefit of humanity or misused for humanity's detriment by the ignorant and profane. HPB's dedication of the voice of the silence to the few takes on increasing significance as her meaning becomes clearer as we look within and proceed on our eternal journey of that which we really are. While we assimilate and apply this ancient philosophy in doing our duty in matter, as lonely as it may be, while returning to our source. Natural impulse pushes us along to the human stage, where we must continue by self-induced and self-devised efforts to uplift ourselves and all around us. Our positive choices and vows attract powers to aid the efforts of those with indomitable will, as have been developed by those proven to be worthy. The powers include masters who know how to work with nature. The following is taken from a writing by one who has pledged. The writing on the meaning of a pledge helps us better appreciate this philosophy's importance to humanity's well-being, even if our correct choice is to remain an exotericist rather than joining the occult lodge. In the words of the writer, it has been thought advisable that members of a certain occult lodge of Theosophy should have the meaning of the pledge they are about to take laid before them as plainly as possible. At any rate, that those who have previously signed the pledge shall lay before those who are about to do so all that they understand that this pledge to mean with its signature involves. The pledge runs as follows. I pledge myself to endeavor to make Theosophy a living factor in my life. Second, I pledge myself to support before the world the Theosophical Movement, its leaders and members. Third, I pledge myself never to listen without protest to any evil thing spoken of a brother Theosophist and to abstain from condemning others. Four, I pledge myself to maintain a constant struggle against my lower nature and to be charitable to the weaknesses of others. Number 5, I pledge myself to do all in my power by study and otherwise to fit myself to help and teach others. And number 6, I pledge myself to give what support I can to the movement in time, money, and work. And it is signed underneath the quote, "So help me, my higher self." The term higher self has come into considerable use. To those who have studied the meaning of the words, it is at once evident that to take an oath in the ordinary fashion, as serious as it may be, is much less serious than a pledge in presence of the higher self. The higher self is not a sort of sublimated essence of any one person, a sort of spiritualized personality. It is universal and secondless. And in such a sense, the term "my higher self" seems misplaced. But every one of us, however dimly, is a manifestation of the higher self. And it is by the connection of the jiva, which is life as the absolute, the monad also, the atma buddhi, the monad with the secondless higher self, that it is possible to use the term. So, what does this invocation mean anyway? The man who takes this pledge in the right spirit calls upon and calls every help and blessing from it to his assistance. By intense desire to be under the protection, he, though per se is latent and passive, places himself under the protection of the active and beneficent powers that are the direct rays of the absolute higher secondless self. But if one takes this pledge and betrays his higher self, he risks every evil and brings it upon himself. So he also has no confidence in himself. So he who has no confidence in himself to keep the pledge when taken had better leave it, and much more, leave occultism alone. But he who remains true to the pledge has nothing to fear. Breaking this pledge cannot involve penalty on the higher self, but it can affect the individual. The higher self is immortal, but the monad exists as a separate individual only during the manvantras. and around it various personalities are formed. This incarnates at every new birth, and not only can be, but is, punished if such a pledge is broken. Once that it has progressed far enough to recognize the glorious light of the higher self and desire to live in it, the breaking of the pledge tends toward a condition which would preclude the possibility of that light not only benefiting the monad, but even reaching it. Everyone is in the presence of two forces in nature, one of them active and beneficent, whose aid and assistance is directly invoked by the pledge. The other active but maleficent, which is represented by beings who have a distinct interest in preventing the operation of the pledge and in hindering the work of Theosophy. We see this more clearly when we know that we pledge ourselves to be active and not merely to endeavor to be. Further, there are powers on the earth and in the flesh, as well as in the astral light, who desire to prevent and hinder the pledge from taking effect. Some of these act consciously in this manner, and others because they are driven to such conscious action, but without any knowledge of the reason or force which drives them thereto. We are to endeavor to make Theosophy a living factor in our lives. Before we can endeavor to do this, much less do it effectively, we must first understand what Theosophy is and actually define to ourselves what we individually mean by Theosophy. It is exactly this definition, its want and our ignorance generally, which hitherto has prevented us from carrying out this endeavor. Nothing need here be said of the Theosophy and the benefit which would come to it by even a small section of its members actually making Theosophy the living factor in their lives. Very few do so, and it is only too true that a member of a theosophical group is not necessarily a theosophist. But those who take this pledge are not content to remain nominally members of their theosophical group, but aspire to be theosophists indeed. So it is necessary that all should learn what a theosophist is and what any person must do to make Theosophy a living factor in one's life. As a negative definition, nothing could be better than the definition in Lucifer number 3, Lucifer was HPV's magazine. He who does not practice altruism, he who is not prepared to share his last morsel with a weaker or poorer than himself, he who neglects to help his brother man, of whatever race, nation, or creed, whenever and wherever he meets suffering, and who turns a deaf ear to the cry of human misery, he who hears an innocent person slandered, whether a brother theosophist or not, and does not undertake his defense as he would undertake his own, is no theosophist. Close quote. But this definition also contains the positive side. It is not sufficient merely to abstain from doing that which is condemned by this definition. The negative side alone is useless to those who take this pledge, and not merely useless, for it involves practically the breaking of the pledge. The pledge demands not only that the person who takes it shall abstain from evil doing, but more than that, he shall positively work altruistically and defend any innocent person as he would himself. Many may be so colorless as not to offend against the negative clauses of the pledge and definition, but few are they who are sufficiently positive in their own character as not only not to defend against these clauses, but also work in the opposite direction. The greatest importance does not consist in "I will not," but in the "I will do." Strength is needed for impersonality. This impersonality is of two kinds, negative and positive. For the negative, strength is needed to fight against the forces of heredity and education and prevent obedience to the instincts and acquired habits of this and other incarnations. But greater strength is needed to cross the 0 point and create new instincts and habits in the midst of conditions of life and habits of thought which are violently opposed to the new creation. And it would seem that strength is required so that it would be possible to conquer the tendencies of a devil and grow up into divinity. As men and women, the pledge compels us to refrain from acting and thinking in our daily life as our education has thus far compelled us to do. If we do not so refrain, we do not make Theosophy a living factor in our lives. And more, while we are engaged in this difficult task, the positive side appears and we are told that we have to do other things as difficult. Otherwise, we are not Theosophists. The second clause of the pledge will prove a stumbling block to many lukewarm members. Many may be in complete accord with the objects of the Theosophical movement so far as they understand them, but also be in complete disagreement with their fellows and their methods of work. Where there is disagreement, we are advised to make gentle adjustments until there is agreement along the lines laid down through the wisdom of the ages. We work for universal brotherhood, and we pledge ourselves to put a stop to and to excise the tendency from our natures to have enmity toward anyone. The question naturally arises, for what use is a Theosophical movement with such aims when it is composed of such diverse elements around us? And again, has a movement any coherence and purpose which shall make it a living power in the society by which it is surrounded? For an analogy, it does exist, and the movement is an individual among societies, just as men and women are individuals. And it may here be emphatically stated that the power and force of any given body is not the total force of its component units, but that the body has an individual force and power of its own apart from them. One has but to turn to the chemistry of alloys to see that this is true. If then we regard the movement, it does not seem that any of its strength is due to the united purpose and action of its individual members. But it has a great purpose, and to this a certain number of devoted individuals have sacrificed all that lay in their power. Among these, the founders and present leaders are notable examples. The result is that the movement continues to exist. But the continued existence of the movement is not due to these few individual efforts alone, but to the underlying influence of those under whose direction the movement was founded, and to the fostering care of these masters of wisdom after it was founded. Clause 3 opens out to many as the movement is at present constituted a good deal of unsound reasoning. It has been said, and it would seem truly said, that it is perfectly open to those who are true theosophists to condemn an act, but not the actor. But this will be found to be a distinction which is very subtle and difficult to make in life. Light on the Path 2 warns the aspirant against self-righteousness of a like character. Quote, for the soiled garment you shirk from touching may have been yours yesterday, may be yours tomorrow. Those who take this pledge are about to meet a very subtle difficulty unless they have attained the power of observing and reading on a plane which at present is beyond the reach of the majority of mankind. However, even if this power is beyond reach at present, it is still right for those who try to and those who aspire to be theosophists, because this power is attainable. We can at least put a bridle on our physical lips and endeavor to do so on our mind, and thus abstain from condemning others, brother theosophists or not. Also, in consideration of the legal maximum so seldom acted upon, always to consider one innocent until proven guilty. Suspicion is a dangerous guest to harbor, and we are finally brought back to the fact that it is best to judge, not that ye be not judged. Clauses 4 and 5 are the completion of resolutions which go straight to the center of all that mitigates against theosophy and against its forming a living factor in our lives. It is in this sense that Clause 6 is a completion also, but the power to help and teach others can only be found in the united spirit of life, which is a spirit of absolute equality, and in the sense that it is a theosophist, that to the theosophist every person is a teacher. Clause 6 is a ratification of all that has gone before, but places it in more definite terms. Thus then, before the pledge is taken, it is necessary for all who aspire to take it to carefully ascertain, before pledging themselves, to understand that theosophy really is. Is theosophy identical with the practice of the Theosophical organization? If it is not, ought it to be? Shall I endeavor to make it so? In pledging myself to work for it, am I in the near or distant future, in this or some succeeding incarnation, looking for a reward? It would then seem that one of the first requisites is to endeavor to know thyself. Such a pledge must not be taken lightly, nor in spirit of mere emotionalism. It has to be taken with a stern resolution to ever and evermore fully carry out its requirements, even at all costs to the person who takes it. It is taken at the risk of the person who takes it in a thoughtless spirit without examining what it really means and without the intention of making its fulfillment the supreme object of his life. It is necessary to read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest the truth which exists in Theosophy, and then perhaps there may dawn upon the world the day when all shall be as brothers, and universal brotherhood shall be a reality and the guide of all existence. And it's a prepared presentation. I'll open the floor to comments and questions. Yes.
So then you listed all these different components of the pledge. In your estimation, is each one as important as the other one?
Well, it's all intended to lead to self-development and universal brotherhood. Universal brotherhood being the bottom line. And we have to first make it a living factor in our lives, and endeavor to help others understand the importance of the philosophy to themselves and to humanity in general to come. This philosophy appeared on the scene, as many others do, before we were ready for it. And there's only a few still seems to understand the importance of the philosophy. But as we live it, we need to live it, and as we do that and interact with others, it's going to pick up steam. And make no mistake about it, HPB dedicated the voice to the few. She knew what she was talking about. There were a few in her time. Yes, it increased a lot in numbers because of her and Mr. Judge, so knowledgeable about the subject, so integrated and so forth. And it goes in cycles. We're sort of at a downward cycle right now, but it's going to pick up. There's no question about it. And the masses will always be there to keep it alive in the world. But it's up to us to do our part too. The individual lodges need nourishment, and participation in by all of us. So they all interact, and which is more important than the other?
I think they're all important.
They're all important. Yeah.
Well, I have now a follow-up question. That number 3, abstain from condemnation. Well, this is a chatterbox society that we live in. People are continuously on their telephones looking to see what excitement is out there, and people communicate with one another and tweeting and all this stuff. And one does not really know what is real and what is not, in the sense that even in HPB's time, HPB said that gossip starts from some corner which has no basis, but that in no time it's like wildfire, it catches on. And she says truth then has to fight against such a tendency, that it has no place to rest its head. So with this today, to me, to this student, is even worse, because people believe what they see online. This student doesn't pay any attention to it, but there are a lot of people that do. And not only that, then once they see something negative, they can distribute it to the others. they can really ruin people's reputations that way.
Sure they can.
In no short time, through this media junk.
For those who are trying to introduce this very important message. And that's the reason why we have this in here, abstain from condemning. Because we're all at different points on the path. And this student is not aware of any of us that are perfect. Certainly this student is not. And we're going to make mistakes as we learn. The idea is to learn from our mistakes and just keep on going. And the idea that anybody would be condemning of anyone, Theosophist or not, is just beyond comprehension. Yet we see a record existing of even HPV in particular.
Yeah,
people went after her and Mr. Judge and others in the movement. And then a lot of condemnation still goes on of people who are trying to put this back on an even keel like it was introduced to us.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you did have a suggestion to zip our lips and only talk the truth as far as we can manage to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you kind of alluded to it too, the white dove of truth has area placed the rest of weary limbs.
That's
so
what she said.
It's going to be, it's a challenging path, but very well worth it because this is the future of the golden age.
Well, we're supposed to start it on Earth at this time, that it needs to exist side by side with it. But all humanity is not at Kali Yuga. When you look at the Eastern countries, where there is a spirituality and not much materiality, I think they are not in the same place as the West.
Well, it's the superstition of the East and the materiality of the West are both very difficult. This student thinks that probably materiality is a very serious problem, but it's not really. It's how you use it. It's a tool, and if we use the material tools right, then it could be a very positive thing. This student watches On the Money on CBS in the morning, on NBC, I guess, ABC. And they had a monk on this morning, and he was saying he became a monk. He was from a very wealthy family. He became a monk, and then he came to realize that he could take his wealth and make a positive benefit from it. So now he's teaching others to improve their financial situation and using the proceeds to help others. So nothing is a negative. It depends on how we use what we get.
Motive.
Our motive. Exactly.
So then you're giving this pledge to yourself, really, to your higher self,
Absolutely.
which is the true self in each one of us.
Well,
so
when you do that, you're giving it to everything because
so
it's
that
universal.
entity is at all times the inner higher self. So if you're giving it to that self, that means it carries.
Absolutely.
It carries through.
Yeah.
So then, what about the people who refuse to take it? Are they also not obligatory in the theosophical circles to follow this path anyway?
Yeah.
So we are not really free to do as we wish in the theosophical circles because we have this guidance to formulate our lives with, regardless of whether you sign it or not. I think all of these clauses are there to guide us to a true building of a center of universal brotherhood, and that's the aim of the Theosophical Movement. So whether you take it or not, you're still working under the same clauses, as far as this student can tell.
Yeah, Theosophists or not, all these rules apply. may have never heard of Theosophy, but this is common sense stuff, you know. And it's helpful when you're surrounded by people who follow this and are sensitive to all this. But we have to do it. We have to learn to do it individually and collectively in order to have a future. You know, to get to a future going toward the golden age. It's impersonal. It doesn't really link totally to organizations or people. This is the rule of nature.
So how does the pledge join with the paramitas?
Directly. I pledge myself to charity. First was love and charity. That's the first one. Okay, and harmony. The second one, patient, sweet. It's in there too. You have to abstain from condemning. You got to have patience with everyone around you, and quietly help them out as best you can. And it goes down the list. The third one being
opposites. Harmony, patience, opposites.
Harmony,
freedom from
patience.
opposites.
Yeah.
So
indifference of pleasure and pain is all in there. It gets to be impersonal again.
Well, I think in this age it's even more succinct. As stated, the gossip spreads very, very quickly, and it can really have a negative effect on people's lives. However, the person who puts it on the media is also responsible for what they're doing, distributing lies and stuff. So, what about our political system? Uses the same media to spread whatever they wish to.
Again, it's how we use our tools. Media being tools too. And we need to again work toward the truth and not fuzzy stuff up so much you can't find. It's hard to find the truth, which seems to be where we're going today. Everything is untrue, which is not true at all. But we have our challenges, and but it's not negative. It's all an opportunity. We can make it an opportunity, or we can make it a problem.
Well, the general society think that they can say and do whatever they like, and then they can go to church on Sunday and they're forgiven for their sins, which there is no such concept in this pledge here.
Yeah, and those who are raised in the church will hear talk about the Monday morning quarterback, which is those that, you go to church on Sunday, and on Monday you forget about everything that was said. You go out and do the same thing all over again. We all have that challenge to live by the rules of nature.
So what this student is getting at is that the commandments of Jesus are not really abided by. Societal norm has really moved away from what he commanded us to do. If we had followed it, we would not be in the situation today. But what happened to his statements? Where have they gone? The people don't even think about those things he said to us at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, he really had not come to the world. He only came to the house of Israel. And it was a very unfortunate event in the Western world that his teachings got askewed. Not only that, they had now become a dogma, and people are enmeshed in the dogma, and it's very tough to separate oneself from it.
Virtually every religion does that. You deteriorate into dogmatic. you know, and this could deteriorate that way too. We have to watch it.
Yeah, and the factors are definitely there because people whose understanding is not with the real theosophy that was brought out pull in a different direction, that it is definitely there. You said that there's a positive and then the negative, that the both forces are there, and we need to watch our own mental makeup and not give in to that kind of influence, because we can be influenced. Everyone has weak points. We can all be influenced in that direction.
But yeah, we run into this all the time too. You know, a person, you know, talking about theosophy, the philosophy being pure, and we all understand that. But that's how it kind of it gets deteriorated too. Mm-hmm. Somebody comes in, I don't like this part of it because it makes me feel sensitive, so I want to change it to something else. You know, and strong personalities can cause it to go downhill.
But
the purest theosophy, the purest philosophy. Was that?
The newcomers wouldn't know what to believe and what not to believe. Well, if the books have been changed, how would you know what's right and what is wrong in it? You wouldn't. So that is why the statement that to change a single word of that book is a crime against humanity, and we need to be very aware of why it was said, because we have newcomers into the movement all the time, and they need to be exposed to the real teachings rather than the false statements that have been interjected into it.
Yes, and we also have to be charitable to those who put the false statements in there too, because they did it not knowing any better. And
some of them intentionally did it.
Even if they intentionally did it, that's
well, they have their own karma.
That's where they're at.
We're not here to judge anybody. You just said, judge the action,
try to
not
keep
the
it
person.
As pure as possible.
We're not talking about people, person.
No.
We're talking about the action they committed in doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But unfortunately, books remain.
Yeah. This chemical alloy thing was was a very poignant example, because what happens when you do the alloy? All of the impurities separate out.
Yeah.
You know, and in time, these impurities, which got stuck in there for selfish reasons, they'll disappear. That concludes the program today. I think our hour is about up. And please join us next week to hear about Paracelsus, right? Okay? And we'll regroup in a little while for our round table on Bhagavad Gita, taking chapter 8 on the notes. So, thank you for joining us.